Time now for everyone's favorite segment of the week.
It's time for a good old-fashioned Q&A.
Oh,
MMA
I can't
fans.
wait. I hope there's a lot of questions about
Ladies
Jinder
and
Mahal.
gentlemen, the moment has
A
arrived
lot of
to
questions
hear
about
from the
Aaron
man
Rodgers.
himself, Ariel Helwani.
Perhaps Nate Diaz, Jorge
Live
Masvidal
from the Vox
questions.
Studios in beautiful New
The
York
big
City.
fight announcement last
It's
night.
on the nose.
Donald
And
Cerrone
now,
versus
to
Twisted
answer your
Steel.
questions,
I mean, I'm
get out of
hoping.
your seats and
Let's
on
see.
your feet
Let's see if there are
because
any hot
here he
tags.
is,
We're actually going
Ariel
to.
Helwani.
Yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna go a little old school here, my friends. No moderation this week. Frank was a little bit tied up, and so I'm just gonna go in blind. Do you guys think this is going to be a huge mistake, or do you think it's going to be a grand old time?
I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. And so I'm going to go into it right away. Okay, I see some here. By the way, I didn't read them, but I'm trying to like read ahead. And
So
so
there's
no, just because.
Amanda Huggett.
Well, there's a good question here from OC about pizza, but do I want to start with pizza? No, so I'll come back to
the
that.
moderator's dilemma.
Aaron, why is Tom Aspinall going after fighters and not the matchmakers? I think this is a great place to start. Tom Aspinall is trying to pick a fight with a particular fighter. So ultimately, if you're going to get the people behind you and start some sort of campaign, is it smarter to go after Mick Maynard and company, or is it smarter to go after the big dog, Jon Jones? So I get what he's trying to do. Here's what Tom Aspinall is trying to do. Tom Aspinall is trying to get the biggest fight possible for him. Tom Aspinall is trying to get a fight that he's been talking about for a couple of years. Jon Jones is saying, hey, I wanted this fight. This is a legacy fight for me. This was the fight that I was supposed to have in November. I want to make it happen with Stipe, and then maybe down the line we can revisit this. I'm just kind of throwing that part in, but I'm assuming that he would consider it if Tom continues to win. As our good friend York Ric has said on social media, they're both right. Like Jon Jones, he was promised this fight against Stipe. He got injured. He wants to see it through. Fine. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. There's also nothing wrong with Tom Aspinall saying, hey, I'm the man. I have the interim belt. I want to unify these belts. Again, we go back to how we got into this mess. How we got into this mess is because Jon Jones got injured and they made an interim title fight as opposed to stripping Jon Jones, who, by the way, just had a second surgery on his elbow, which makes me think that in a return in the summer will be even more hard to pull off, which makes me think that the UFC is going to have to make a tough call here regarding Jon and regarding Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall is going to have to make a tough call. All of this is a little bit sticky because if Tom Aspinall was just the undisputed champion, you could have had him defend that title against Stipe or then against someone like Ciryl Gane. What I would do if I were them, dating back to November, I would have just taken the belt off of Jon and say, Jon, when you are ready to come back, you will get all the benefits of being a champion. You will get all the points. You will get to fight for the belt. But we have to keep this train moving along because this is a pretty serious surgery that you're about to have, let alone the second one that they didn't know about. Have Tom fight Sergey. Tom wins. Have him fight Stipe. If Stipe doesn't want that fight, fine. We now move on to the next guy. And then whenever Jon Jones is ready to come back, you have him fight for the belt with all the benefits of being a champion. Ultimately, why people like Jon Jones and everyone else on the roster, why they want to be champion, is not so that they can parade around with this 14 pounds of gold. It's so that they can get the benefits of being a champion, get paid like a champion, get pay-per-view points like a champion. If you promise that to the guy who got hurt and who has been champion since 2011, I have a feeling he won't mind. That's my hunch. The part that bothers me and many people about all of this is Jon Jones telling telling Tom Aspinall, you haven't earned this. You haven't done enough. You don't have the resume. And I posted something yesterday, which I think, puts into question what he's saying. Jon Jones, when he got his title shot on short notice because Rashad Evans got hurt at 23, which is something that a lot of people love to bring up, was 12-1. His last 5 fights going into that fight against Shogun Rua, who was a legend, who was a Pride Middleweight Grand Prix winner in a very tough field, who was a current UFC light heavyweight champion. So he could have flexed. He was 19-4. So, 19-4, that's 10 more fights. Last 5 fights were Ryan Bader, Vladimir Matyushenko, Brandon Vera, Matt Hamill, Jake O'Brien, and also of note, Stephan Bonner. So that's 6. That's a very good. No one will ever question Jon Jones's resume. No one will ever question his path. It was a murderer's row, especially like leading all the way up until, maybe 2018 or so. It was a murderer's row. And I know to some of the newer fans, some of these names don't mean anything. They were all very, very tough outs. All of them. Tom Aspinall, currently 30 years old, 14-3, hoping to get a fight against the 27-1 with 1 no contest, Jon Jones. Last 5 fights were against Sergey Pavlovich, Marcin Tybura, Curtis Blades, Alexander Volkov, Sergey Spivak, and also of note, Andrei Arlovsky, the former champ. That's a very solid list as well. I think it's somewhat tit for tat. And he blew right through all of those guys. And so what do you want Tom Aspinall to do? Not ask for the biggest fight possible? What do you want him to do as interim champion? Say, I'm cool with just fighting more of these types of guys? And so what I feel like, if Jon says, I want to fight Stipe when I'm back, that's fine. The UFC, I think, needs to step in for the sake of their organization, for the sake of their titles, and say, look, if you want to fight Stipe, you could do it as a non-title fight. We have to keep this train rolling along. But now what is happening is this belt is being held hostage because there was some promise about this fight. Fights fall through due to injuries all the time and never come to fruition. Ask Karo Parisian back in the day about that. He was supposed to fight for the belt. Ask TJ Grant about that. He was supposed to fight for the lightweight title. Got a concussion. So now we're just going to sit for how long? How long are we going to wait? How long is Tom Aspinall going to wait? How long is the whole division going to wait? No one needs a title on the line when Jon Jones fights Stipe. But Tom Aspinall needs the title now. It's his time. And I see some people saying, oh, Jon was 23, Tom was 30. And so what is the point of that? He's here. He has arrived. He is the consensus best guy in the heavyweight division, not named Jon Jones. And some people think he is the best guy in the heavyweight division, period. Why should he be denied a chance at 30 in his prime to realize his dream of being a UFC champion? And so what's interesting about this whole thing is Tom Aspinall was on TalkSport recently and was talking about the heavyweight boxing politics and how, there's only mismatches and whatnot. And I wrote to him about this yesterday. And I was like, you see, this is why some people were saying, ain't it a bit rich that you're saying this? You understand that if you were the same guy in the heavyweight division in boxing, promoted by Queensberry or Matchroom or Top Rank, you would not have this problem. You would be paid correctly, treated correctly, and you wouldn't be banging your head against the wall, begging this guy to give you a shot. It just wouldn't happen this way. Now, I know that there are other politics and there's this and that going on in boxing. It is not, it is not Valhalla, but you don't get treated like this. And you don't get treated like, hey, we'll call you. Tom Aspinall has no idea when he's fighting again. No clue. He is not a part of those plans. He doesn't know if it's going to be in Manchester in the summer. He doesn't know if he's fighting at UFC 300, which I think he should be one of the people showcased on that card. He doesn't know anything. You think Anthony Joshua is sitting around saying, hey, Eddie, can you give me some insight? You think Tyson's sitting around and saying, hey, Frank, can you give me some insight? It doesn't work like that in boxing. But it works like that when you're a part of this crazy sport, unfortunately. And so I understand where he's coming from. I understand to a degree where Jon Jones is coming from. I just wish that the belt wasn't being tied up. And if he really wants that Stipe fight, no one needs the title attached to that one. Because what does it really mean? Stipe Miocic hasn't fought or won a fight in how long? The last time he won a fight, I know he lost to Francis and that was 2021. The last time he won a fight was the DC fight, in 2020. By the time this fight happens, it's going to be 4+ years. You are trying to tell the world that your heavyweight division is the best division in the sport. People who haven't won fights in 4 years shouldn't be fighting for the heavyweight title. Not when there's a guy like Tom Aspinall out there waiting in the wings. In my opinion.
Can I offer a devil's advocate?
Yeah.
Position. for one, we just saw a similar situation happen in the welterweight division, right? Bilal Muhammad is sitting there. He's a rightful contender, and Colby got the shot. Like, this is not brand new, nor is
That doesn't make it right.
a
That
champion.
doesn't make it right.
No. I'm not implying that it's right. I'm just saying this is not unprecedented, right?
It's also
We're not looking at
2 versus 4 years. It's double the time.
since he won.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but fair.
I think the UFC is to blame here, but not for the reason that you've kind of touched on earlier, for a different reason, which is they've made interim titles into number one contendership, when in reality they are exactly for the purpose that they're being used here. I would argue that this is one of the first times they're using it for its intended purpose properly. I would say that while Jon Jones is injured, there isn't a reason to strip him, because Jon Jones being your champion is a benefit to the company, and he should remain champion. Tom Aspinall is the interim champion, the name implying that in the champion's stead, while he is injured, Tom should be carrying that interim belt, and there's no issue with him defending it. He should defend it. That is a very simple way that this could be resolved. But unfortunately, the UFC has made interim titles into just like having a secondary belt that needs to be unified immediately, and have made fans believe that Tom Aspinall his next fight needs to be for the championship because he's the number one contender, and that's what it is. In reality, this is exactly what interim titles are for. Jon Jones should be the champion. Tom should be the interim champion. Tom should try to get the best fight he can. Stipe Miocic, Jon Jones, whatever he can get. And if not, he fights the next contender. That's what this should be. To me, this is the exactly how it should play out. This is exactly what these titles were made for. But unfortunately, they have made them so meaningless in that regard, and only made them trinkets that mean I'm number one contender and I'm carrying this around as my number one contender chip.
Sure.
That people have been fooled by that, and people think that that's what this is, but it's not. Tom should just defend his interim title.
Let me ask you this. Why does Jon Jones need the heavyweight title?
He doesn't, but why should he give it up?
He shouldn't give it up. They should take it from him.
Why should they take it from him?
Because he's won one fight in 4 years.
Tom can defend his. He has a belt.
He didn't even beat the heavyweight champion. It was a fake fight. So my point is,
corruptions of the belt is separate from this.
I'm not saying Jon Jones should willingly give up the title. Why would he do that? The UFC should have done that in November.
Why can't Tom defend his interim?
He could, but why should he? He should be defending.
So you're saying Jon should defending do this? Why should
title.
he? I'm saying Tom should do this. Why should he?
He should be defending the undisputed title that he won at Madison Square Garden.
Why can't he defend the interim title?
But again, I'm saying it should have never been an interim title fight. It should have never been an interim title fight because Jon Jones was going to be out.
I could agree with that.
It should have never.
But I don't think you should. You should strip Jon Jones. There's no reason. Why can't Tom just defend the interim title?
I've always believed, and I've said this on the show, I have always believed if you're not defending a title within a year, they've got to move on. And he's not going to be defending the title within a year. It's going to be past March when he fights again.
I wouldn't have an objection to that. I just don't think that we're at that point where it needs to be done right now.
We know he's not fighting in March.
Jon Jones has a booking, right? When he comes back, the UFC is gung-ho on Stipe Miocic versus Jon Jones. The UFC wants it. Jon Jones wants it. Stipe wants it. Tom is the only one who wants the other fight. Tom wants that. Tom wants Jon Jones. Jon Jones doesn't want it. UFC doesn't want it. So there's only one party involved. Same with the Stipe fight. UFC doesn't want it, and Stipe doesn't want it. So ultimately, if their plans are that,
I think the UFC would do the Stipe fight, but I think Stipe very clearly doesn't want it. I also would say that right now, if you tell Jon Jones, hey, we're going to move on, I don't think he will have a problem. And honestly, he can't do anything about it. And so my question was to you, why is it better for business for Jon Jones to be sitting on the sideline with a belt? Does that pay-per-view sell any more shows? Does that buy rate go up any more if it's Jon Jones versus Stipe for the heavyweight title, or if it's just Jon Jones versus Stipe?
Does the next Tom Aspinall fight do better if it's, okay, Jon Jones vacated the belt and now it says champion or interim champion?
I think
it's the same.
I think so. It's the heavyweight title.
They're the same.
It's the heavyweight title.
It's the same permutation.
It's the heavyweight title, and now he goes in as the champion against the winner of Stipe versus Jon Jones.
He's still the champ.
Here's my other question.
Champ.
Has Jon Jones given you any indication that if Tom Aspinall goes out and fights Ciryl Gane next, let's just say. Not in the works, but like he seems to be the next guy. That if Tom beats Ciryl, Jon would then consider fighting him. He keeps talking about
If he does not,
then we should strip him.
then I would strip him.
But has he given you any indication now that he is interested?
He hasn't even come back to fight yet.
No, but like based on his tweets and all that shit, does the Ciryl Gane change?
Nope.
So what do we do?
Doesn't seem that way, but
he's the only
unnecessary.
one. He's the only one that's poo-pooing Tom Aspinall. He's the only one that's saying you can't sniff my jock. And
by the way, by doing it, they're building a much more interesting fight. This was the same thing as Francis Ngannou.
This is what's getting everyone fired up. And that is a great point that you're saying. Is this affecting his legacy? Because now I'm starting to see, which is a little bit of revisionist history, where it's like, you didn't want Francis, now you don't want Tom. What's going on here? Is this this is
it could.
Forget about the PEDs. He has the greatest resume in the history of the sport. No one fought, especially at his age, the killers and legends and Hall of Famers. It sucks that we're even having this conversation. But it is hard for me to digest the idea that a guy who has only fought once since February of 2020, who got this title shot because of the Francis situation and won the belt because of the Francis situation, is now injured and just had a second surgery and is holding up an entire division. It's not
He's
the
not
way.
holding it up, though. This is the part where I disagree. Tom can fight. There's nothing stopping Tom from fight. Tom is doing what Jon is doing. Jon is saying, this is the fight that I think is the biggest fight for me. You get paid differently when you're the
heavyweight champion. You get paid differently. Your life is different. You're the heavyweight champ or the interim heavyweight champion. It's a different world. It's a different world.
Jon Jones shouldn't give that up, should he?
Jon Jones is fine. He's holding up the dreams of everyone else.
He's not.
He is. He is, because if he gives up that title, Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the world. How is he not? He's actually doing that. He's
not giving up his own dream.
Oh,
what about his?
Get out of here. What about his? He's got enough.
What do you mean?
What are you talking about? Jon Jones comes back.
Out of benevolence, I just decide that Tom Aspinall is now king. Like, no.
Jon Jones
should not give it up.
Jon Jones is at the point, because he's a legend, where he is getting paid. He's getting everything the same. He's getting everything the same. He's Conor McGregor's status in the sport. He's Khabib's status in the sport. He doesn't need the belt like Tom does. And I'm not telling him to do charity, but I'm just saying.
This is what you are saying.
What I'm saying is, ultimately, for the supposed
this is
greatest of all
UFC's
time.
call, not Jon's.
I said that. I said that at the very beginning, but it's a bad look. Just say, hey, man, you're doing great stuff. Hey, Paulo, what's up?
Ask him about this.
I will ask him about this. I don't know how that just happened, but I think it's a bad look for the baddest man on the planet to say to Tom Aspinall, when you can clearly all see who Tom Aspinall is, and he has fought everyone put in front of him, and it was just the Curtis Blades thing that is like the one blemish, to be like, nah, you're not good enough to be in my orbit. Come on.
See, that part I agree with. The resume conversation, nonsense. It's just Jon Jones.
That's the part that's
deciding
bothering me the most. That's the part. What did I say at the beginning of all this? I understand where Jon is coming from. He wants this legacy fight. I wish that the UFC made it cleaner. I understand where.
Do we even agree that it's a legacy fight?
Stipe versus Jon?
Yeah, I honestly feel like Tom does more for his legacy, if at all, slightly, just because he kind of beats a guy who's relevant. The explanation for why Jon Jones wants the Stipe fight is flimsy to me, if I'm being honest. Like, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't think that it makes a ton of sense from a legacy perspective, but he seems to believe that. UFC seems to believe that. Obviously, Stipe believes that, because he's, the party that benefits the most out of it. I don't know. The reasoning is flimsy to me, but I would be in no rush to take the title off Jon, nor Jon give it up, if I'm being honest. But yeah, Tom's resume is not something to criticize in terms of Tom should not get this fight.
Right.
That's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But this is what an interim title is for. Legitimately, this is the one actual time they're using it properly. This is what it should be. Tom defends and then fights Jon Jones or Stipe, hopefully.
Oded. Hi, Ariel. Did you watch The Iron Claw? And if so, what did you think about it? Unfortunately, I didn't. I really want to see it. Anyone here see it?
No, not yet, but I have big plans to. Heard it's unbelievably sad.
Yeah. And you're in that mode right now. You just saw The Wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah. Back-to-back wrestling movies. Wrestler also kind of sad.
Yeah, kind of sad. But you gave it what? You gave it a 6 out of 10? What'd you give it?
7. 7 flat out of 10. Good movie. Would recommend to watch. Nice and short. It's like an hour 50.
Yeah, it's solid. Did Rick or Frank see Iron Claw?
No, I don't think anyone has yet.
No.
Going to, though.
Not dying to.
Field trip?
I've listened to like 10 different podcasts about it.
Wow. Listen to the podcast before watching it? Is
Yeah,
that
interesting? That is interesting.
I tend to listen to things that are not spoilery. Also, I mean, it's kind of based on a true story, so it's not like it's not exactly the
Sure.
end of.
I don't know one thing
Avengers
about the
Endgame.
story, so I can't wait to see it.
the Von Erichs? I love that they made this movie. It's incredible.
Efron, shout out.
Yeah. Oded also asks, what is your favorite pro wrestling movie and what is your favorite pro wrestling documentary? That is a great question. Favorite pro wrestling movie? Easy. Layup. Ready to Rumble. Who's seen it? Who's seen it?
I've seen that.
So good. Have you seen it, Connor?
No, I haven't even heard of it. Ready to Rumble.
Ready to Rumble, starring the great. Come on, give it to me.
James?
Oh my God!
Don't say it. He's gonna see it right now. It's gonna pop up on the screen right now, starring the
David
great
Arquette.
David Arquette.
There we go.
It's a
I
great.
couldn't think of his name anyway. so I
Hey,
couldn't
they got
explain.
Mike Goldberg in here, too.
And Scott Kahn.
Scott Kahn, wow.
David Arquette then became WCW heavyweight champion off the back of that movie, which was a very controversial moment in the history of pro wrestling.
If this
Like,
is
in
not
the wrestling world, as promo for a movie, he becomes champion. It was crazy times.
Do you remember this?
that's ridiculous.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
In
of course.
real life, he became actually
Yes.
champion.
Yes.
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 And this is like, this poster has to be the most 2000s poster I've ever
It's
seen.
so good. It's
Scott Kahn, shout out.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really fun movie. I really enjoyed it. Oliver Platt is in it and a bunch of the WCW guys. Favorite documentary is a really hard one because there's been several great pro wrestling documentaries, but ultimately I would say it has to come down to two. Beyond the Mat, which came out in the late 90s, maybe no, actually came out in 2000, either 99 or 2000, I'm pretty sure 2000. I went with my sister to the theaters to watch that. There was only playing in one theater in Montreal. And if it came out in 2000, she was 9. And if it came out in 99, she was 8. And it was pretty gruesome at times. Beyond the Mat is just amazing. If you have never seen Beyond the Mat, no documentary, no independent documentary, and it was directed by Barry Blaustein, will ever get this kind of access into the world of WWE. But then there's also great stuff regarding ECW and the Indies and whatnot. And then the second one, it's neck and neck, 1A, 1B, Wrestling with Shadows. And that's about Bret Hart, and in particular, 96, 97, going into the Montreal Screwjob and everything that went on. Again, the access is unbelievable. And really one of my, honestly, like 2 favorite documentaries ever that I've ever seen are those 2. So definitely go check those out if you have not seen them. OC, good day, Ariel and the crew. I will skip the pleasantries because I have an extremely serious question that needs everyone's immediate input. When sharing a pizza with someone, after you each take your first slice on your respective side of the pizza and eat it, when you go in for the next slice, are you each obligated to take a slice next to the first slice you took? That's very interesting. Or can you go wandering around the pie and take your next slice from anywhere? The fat guy in me wants to take the slice from anywhere, but I think proper pizza etiquette is following the pizza path you started. I wonder what y'all think. Happy New Year, if it's not too late to say so by now. And thanks so much to everyone for putting on great shows every week. It's a great question. I try not to touch because, you want to rip and you're going to have to touch another slice when you do the rip.
Do you even share pizza with people?
I mean, very rare if I'm being honest,
I
but
figured as much.
you need to try to cut them and separate them. And I would say it's a little bit rude and manque de classe, if you get what I'm saying, lack of class, to like go over to the other side and now start taking
Why
the
is that
biggest
rude?
piece.
It means
But
like
what's
you got
the
your eyes on
advantage of
you
that?
got your eyes on it for a reason. It may have more toppings
more
on it, maybe
toppings.
bigger.
May have
you know.
less
Oh,
toppings.
I see.
You see something that you like about it. That's the only reason you would go to that piece.
I see.
Like, when a pizza's covered in jalapeno, do you sometimes pick less jalapeno on a slice, more, depending on...
I mean,
I kind of just picked the one next to it by default, but this
Yeah.
is making sense to me. The idea,
It-
like,
it
hey, maybe that
typically
one
is-
has more toppings and stuff.
Yeah, it's typically how I do it. I usually just grab the slice next to the empty space. You know,
I
and keep the
just
circle rolling.
grab what I want?
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
it doesn't surprise me.
I don't think that's that bad. I feel like that's okay.
I feel like you're
that's
sharing a
alright.
pizza. You're not like
I'm actually with you. I don't mind it.
collaborating.
There's been a
Yeah.
couple of times where I've been guilty of it. I mean, you see a really good slice, you're walking up there. It should technically be available to you if you're sharing.
It's
Yeah.
why you could display the whole thing. It would be a pizza dispenser if it was supposed to be an
Can I
order.
say something? Can I,
Once you take it too, then now it's been completely disrupted, and now everyone's free to grab from wherever
Yeah,
they want.
so knock the first domino over, pandemonium, everyone's
yeah,
happy.
yeah, I like that. You're a
okay,
trendsetter.
can I say something? Can I say that if you're sitting at a table, I think the appropriate thing to do is to take the one closest to you. If you're at a party, let's
Good
say it's like
call.
a Super Bowl party or whatever, and all the pizza is out like on an island or a table somewhere, and you have to get up, I think it's a little bit weird to then start ripping to take the, like, let's say there's like a pie like this and there's 2 slices missing, and now you're going to go on the opposite side and cut open the whole thing just to take one out of the middle. I think that's a little bit weird too. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to keep a little bit of decorum.
You also got to remember, if you're going to do this at a party, you're likely, you get up during the commercial break or whatever, you're probably going to be alone. Then you got free reign.
But now
no
everything's
one can
all
pin
open.
it on you.
Everything's all unripped, and it's
Who's
just
the
like,
guy that's keeping track of? Well, so and so was up at the box.
I come
5
back
minutes
and
ago.
I'm the one who's judging. I'm 100%. And then what if it's not a clean rip? And now all of a sudden it's like halvesy rip.
Sometimes
and
that's
there's
on the
cheese.
fault of the pizza.
Is there anything worse than there being a stack of pizza boxes and you have to go through trying to find which toppings one you want?
Yeah.
Then there's
I mean, that
always
just
the
creates
mensch
a whole
who
scene.
consolidates them.
Yeah, but then that guy's touching everything. I actually prefer
Yeah.
him not to
Okay,
touch on
you're
my
sharing
pizza.
food.
Nah.
Again, not a dispenser. What do you do when you break bread? You're like,
I pass
don't
the
touch
bread to
this.
them, and they break
like
it
you're
off
breaking a
themselves.
wishbone.
That's right. Dustin, Happy New Year, MMA Hour fam. I have a friend that loves to talk pay-per-view buys based on interviews. By the way, is there any more annoying conversation these days on the internet as far as combat sports is concerned than the pay-per-view buy talk? Like people just insulting each other based on pay-per-view buys, especially in the influencer world. They love this. Based on interviews I've seen with promoters and insiders in the sport, seems like the validity of these numbers are always called into question. To me, this doesn't seem like the best gauge of interest or views for a fight. Sure, especially with, piracy and whatnot. What, if any, is a reputable source for this information? How are these calculated? There isn't one. It doesn't exist. There are some journalists who, have the buys, but they're not 100%. And for various reasons, the outlets, the networks, the platforms, whatever you want to say, don't want to put them out. And they advise the fighters not to put it out. And so there's no like Nielsen, and who knows these days how accurate that is. There's no official source for pay-per-view buys. It has never existed, and it probably will never exist unless it's like a situation where you're watching it on YouTube and there's actual views in your face. I don't know if it will ever exist. Does the crew think that this somewhat of an antiquated business model, especially considering the unresolvable issue of piracy? Much love from Colorado. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's antiquated because honestly, the UFC is killing it on pay-per-view, and other like Garcia and Tank did great. There are certain fights that are pay-per-view worthy. I will say it doesn't make sense for everyone. I don't think PFL should be in the pay-per-view business. I don't think their super card with Bellator next month should be a pay-per-view. I think sometimes boxing has in the past shot itself in the foot by putting fights on pay-per-view that shouldn't be on pay-per-view, although they're doing that less and less these days, which I think makes a hell of a lot more sense. But I don't think it's antiquated for the big dogs. And piracy is always going to be an issue. And I would presume that at some point it's going to resolve itself in that there's going to be less and less pay-per-view, or people are just going to invest more and more into piracy. And even if they do, it's going to always be a thing. And so maybe people get around it by putting it on like a Prime or a Plus or a Peacock for $5 as opposed to, WWE did that. They just gave all their pay-per-views to Peacock. Didn't give it. They sold them to Peacock and said, hey, we're going to, try to estimate what these could have done. And now you just have to subscribe. And now you get WrestleMania and you get all the big WWE PLEs, as they call them, for one subscription price rather than having to buy it every month for $50. That's part of the evolution as well. Kevin, the other day I went down a rabbit hole of some of the earlier MMA Hour shows in your second stint. Fun seeing how much GC has also grown in this spotlight as the babyface. I'm currently watching the show from September 29th, 2021, and seeing how many people in the live chat saying, who the F is that guy when GC segment was on, to him becoming one of the biggest stars in MMA social media. Let's take a second to give GC his flowers. And Matt Arnold adds, below that, I have friends who don't even watch MMA who send me GC memes. That's how you know you made it. How about that, GC? Did you ever think that you would
what a moment.
Did you ever think that you would be welcomed with such warm welcoming hands,
No.
arms. No.
No.
You never
Definitely
thought it
not.
would turn out like this.
Definitely not. No. Blown away by it. Blown away.
What are we at now on social media? I mean, I saw recently you are having like 5 million views on some of your
Yeah, I
memes.
don't know. Lose track at this point.
Wow.
Lose track at
Over 20K on Instagram?
No.
On Twitter?
Twitter, yeah. Twitter.
30?
Over 25K on Twitter.
Wow.
Not 30. Following's kind of plateauing, you know. People are getting used to me. People are getting tired of me.
Do you ever get tired of the memes, or do you just love making them? And when do they come to you? Like in the middle of the night? Like, what's the thought process? How does it work?
I don't know. The most random moments.
How does
they
the
just come to
sausage
me.
get made? Which one do you think is your best meme?
I don't know. I mean, there's been a few that like. The funniest thing is maybe my best one probably didn't get the most likes. Some of them I actually think there's sometimes where I think they're like hilarious and they kind of flop a little bit.
Like what's the best one that didn't hit that you thought
Man,
was
I
like a
don't-
sure thing?
I'd have to go through them. I mean, I've literally posted thousands since we started this.
Why do you enjoy doing this so much? Like, what's the?
Because it's lighthearted. It's fun. It's hilarious. I don't like to get into all the seriousness.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I appreciate
sometimes I just see some nasty stuff out there.
A lot of arguing.
So yeah, I mean, this is a way to keep it fun, keep it light.
And have you ever thought about taking your meme talents to other sports? Meaning, I'm sure you watch football, this that, but you
Yeah,
never
okay,
meme
yeah,
about those
yeah.
sports. You just
They all
keep it
fall
in the-
flat. All fall flat.
they all
my following is MMA based. man.
Okay,
It's-
all right.
It's people want to see MMA stuff. I post about football. It gets like 3 likes. I'm
Fair
like,
enough.
all right, message received. We'll stay away from the football. It's nice though because it's like every other realm of my life I can just leave off social media.
That's true.
I just don't even have to think about it. And then when it's MMA, I'm like, yep, we'll throw it on old social.
Try the forest memes. People love that.
I get in the responses and people are like, "Oh, are you like Helwani, you fake ass fan?" I'm just
Plastic
like,
fan?
"Man." Yeah, plastic.
They can only
fan.
see our text threads, huh?
I'm like, dude, I watch every game. We watch the FA Cup game. I'm sweating out the FA Cup game on an Amtrak train using Amtrak Wi-Fi to like watch the entire Forest Blackpool game. I'm like, yeah, I'm a fan. I've been here since the Steve Cooper era. I've been here.
That's right.
10 toes down, baby.
Hut, Ariel, the Adesanya Pereira 3 fight is an absolute must for the main event of UFC 300, right? If built correctly, this rivalry will go down as the greatest trilogy ever in the UFC. It's already close. If Izzy wins, OMG, now he is also a two-weight champ. And with 2 wins over Poatan. However, if Poatan wins convincingly, he slams the door on the rivalry. Oh my God, the stakes. I'm so excited for this. Thoughts. Love the show. Shout out to the crew. I don't disagree at this point that it would be a great addition. I just don't know if it happens. Would you be okay with this as the main event, GC? Would you feel like it's big enough? It's 300 worthy?
You're gonna have to excuse me. I got distracted.
Izzy Pereira 3.
Izzy Pereira 3.
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. Our good friend Jed Michoud actually threw a nice conspiracy theory out to me that he believes if DDP wins next week, they're going to try and flip him around and book DDP Adesanya for 300.
I don't mind that. I would love to see if DDP wins on January 20th and doesn't get on the microphone and call out Izzy, I mean, that is promotional malpractice 101. That's the fight to make, right? And you can make a strong case that Izzy versus Strickland 2 would be gigantic as well. What is bigger? Izzy Strickland 2 or Izzy DDP or Khamzat DDP or Khamzat Strickland? Rank them.
Man. What was that, 5 of them?
4. I'll give you my rankings first.
Okay, yeah.
Izzy
go ahead.
Strickland 2, 1, biggest. Izzy DDP, second biggest. Khamzat Strickland, third biggest. Khamzat DDP, fourth biggest.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, but I think I would put Izzy DDP 1. There was just so much heat with that matchup.
Yeah. I just feel like the Izzy versus either guy scenario is bigger than the Khamzat at this point.
Oh yes, I think.
I feel like some of the heat has gone off Khamzat at this point.
Yeah.
After the-
Plus, I mean, Izzy was a long-standing champion. He's a massive superstar, and like now it's like, can he get his get back, or like, was that the break in the armor there with that Strickland matchup?
Yeah.
Okay, what about
Okay,
Izzy
yeah,
versus
hop in here,
Khamzat?
Rick.
Say it again.
Izzy versus Khamzat.
For the belt?
That's a big one.
For the belt? Or just
that might be the biggest one, though. If we're just throwing out
honestly,
I think that might be the biggest fight.
I think the dynamic between Izzy and Strickland is bigger now than Izzy and Khamzat have very little heat. They never really talk about each other.
But
The press conference would be great. Also, like I think
You don't think
didn't Izzy go on
building it
You
his-
don't think the Izzy Strickland press conference will be box office, or what about?
No,
the
that's what I'm
DDP?
saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying I think they would both
I'm
be
not-
box office.
I gotta be honest. I don't think that the Izzy Strickland thing is gonna really like have a ton of heat.
Oh man.
Like
I think
they're
Strickland
gonna
would be
fight
saying some
over.
wild things. After the
Maybe,
performance that
but-
he put on, and if he would have a defense under his belt against DDP, I mean, I feel like he would really be talking some shit.
I have a feeling that Israel's angle on that is just gonna be made the adjustments, gonna fight him. Like what's Izzy's real beef with Sean Strickland? Like he beat me. I mean, you can even hear it when he like talks about the fight or rewatches the fight and talks about it. I don't think there's a lot of animosity on that side. Izzy
How
versus
do you rank him, Rick?
DDP. I think I might be with you that I think
think that's
Izzy
one.
DDP by the time it comes, that one would be pretty massive.
I think that's one. I can't wait for that fight next week. That's going to be amazing.
yeah.
And I think Khamzat versus Izzy might be the biggest one.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
I think if Sean or DDP has a great performance, like if it's a ho-hum fight next weekend, then I think some of the luster goes away. If either guy comes out there, guns blazing, knockout, gets on the microphone and said, "Izzy, get off your ass," and look, good spot to be in if you're Israel. You got Alex calling you out after he wins the 205 belt at MSG, and then you'll probably have the middleweight champion call you out, especially if you're DDP. Sean may go in a different direction. I don't know, but it's a good spot to be in for a guy who doesn't hold any gold at the moment, which speaks to his success over the last few years. Abe, hello, Ariel. Quick question and request. Will we be seeing a return of the Royal Rumble lottery game from you and the crew? That was honestly one of my favorite MMA Hour memories from early 2023. P.S. Make sure Frank sends the money in advance. Much love. Happy New Year, your boy Abe. I would love this. In fact, I think we still have, I mean, it was over there. It's gone now, but I had it the entire year. I had the little lottery thingy. Are we doing this again, guys?
Yeah, Tropicana
to.
Field.
Yes. Are we doing it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I dug that. I think that was fun last year.
All right. What
Gets me
happened
to
to the
watch it.
lottery thing? Where did it go?
I think we still have it.
All right.
That'll be somewhere.
So we're
I
gonna do
will
it.
say though, at a certain point, it became so obvious, like
Nah, it was fun.
what was going to happen. No, it was fun. I dug it.
That would have to be on the 24th. So put in your calendars. Okay.
Done. It's on
All
the
right.
calendar.
And
Jacob, hey Ariel, any update on Dillon Danis? I really want to see him in MMA with the UFC or elsewhere. He has gone radio silent since your live show in New York. Makes me think he has something just waiting for an announcement. I haven't heard that. Look, I think he was a little bit too open about his desire to be in the UFC. It's, I think it's a little bit smart to play the field and to play hard to get. And I think saying, I want to be in the UFC or bust. I wonder if Bellator didn't release him right before the sale, would PFL have him in a tournament? Would PFL have him on a Bellator card? Would, not the worst place to be for someone like him. But I have not heard anything. I still think he ends up there. Maybe Connor puts in a call. Maybe he fights on this June 29th card. And I would still like to see it. And I think any welterweight who tells you they wouldn't take that fight is lying, because it would get a ton of buzz and interest and all that stuff. But nothing at the moment. Luis, hi Ariel. Cris Cyborg posted on X last week that Kayla Harrison has declined an offer to fight her. Do you know how truthful that is, and do you think that fight will ever happen? That is not 100% true, unfortunately. They are going to do this card. My understanding is neither Kayla nor Cris is on it, and I think that's a little bit of a bummer, because when you think of Bellator versus PFL, the first fight that comes to mind is Kayla versus Cyborg, but there's different factors at play here. Number one, Kayla's contract. She told us that was her last fight, the one that was in late November, and Cris Cyborg has a boxing match coming up, and I think it's just a little bit too close to this proposed February 24th date. So I don't think Kayla may have turned it down as part of a, hey, if you re-sign, you get this, but like, come on, that's not exactly telling the truth. And my understanding was that they wanted Cris to fight on this card, but it was a little bit too close to her boxing fight, which, I personally am more interested in Cris fighting in MMA to round out her career because I just think there's bigger fights for her there as opposed to, like, sign me up for, if we're not getting Cris versus Kayla, sign me up for Cris versus Larissa Pacheco. Can we see that? The number one fight is Cris versus Kayla. But if we can't see that, Cris versus Pacheco would be great. Way more interesting to me than Cris versus, some boxer that we've never heard of. But no, not 100% true, and doesn't look like we're getting it, which is a bummer. Gaza Brew. Hope all is well. Wondering how much influence does you and your show have on the UFC in making fights happen? Do you think Dana has someone watching the show to see what fighters are saying? I know they watch the show. I know they're aware of the show. In what, obviously they're aware of it, but in what way do they watch it? Is it just through socials? God knows. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But I don't really know that, we're not sitting here saying, you must make this fight, you must make that fight. But they're aware because I know that sometimes, someone will say something on the show and then they'll get a call an hour later. They'll tell me that. So they're aware. And that's fine. The funny thing is that other than my relationship or whatever you want to call it with Dana, I think I have a pretty good relationship with everyone at the UFC. Do we talk every day? No. Do we talk every week? No. But no beef with Sean Shelby or Mick Maynard. No beef with Hunter Campbell. Never met him in person, or Lawrence Epstein or any of those people. So I don't see why they wouldn't watch the show. Pecan Pie up in this. Hey, Ariel, it was announced last week that Money in the Bank will be taking place on July 6th. Do you suspect that this is the reason why International Fight Week is being moved 1 week earlier, since both the UFC and WWE are under the same umbrella? I did think this. I did ask about this, and I'm still unclear. I still think there's something to this June 29th thing. What that is, I don't know, but it just seems very random that it's June 29th. And perhaps, if I'm TKO, why would I want the two shows going head to head? But also, then why wouldn't one of them be on the 13th? You know what I mean? June 29th just seems very weird to me. I feel like we're going to find out soon the reason behind this. Cole, Ariel, do you think we'll see Justin versus Max defend the BMF title at UFC 300? I know it sounds silly, but with most of the champions not available, I could see this as another promotional tool. Sure. Do I really care to see it? I mean, it's a great fight, but I prefer Max at 145. Do you guys have a strong interest in that? Max at 45 to me is more interesting than Max going back up to 55. Anyone?
Yeah, it's not really about the weight classes. I just think the fight would be incredible.
Yeah.
It's a good fight, but it's not going to be the thing that all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, 300's a banger now. So they might as well just keep that somewhere else if they want to do that. But it seemed like Islam Makhachev tweeted, or somebody on behalf of Islam Makhachev tweeted this morning that they're looking at Justin in June. So maybe that's Justin's next step.
As many times as the BMF belt can get put on the line, the better.
So this wasn't asked yet. I'm sure I'm going through all of these here kind of in real time. But since we're talking about the BMF title, let's talk about Jorge Masvidal versus Nathan Diaz. This was announced on, or I guess reported by Happy Punch. And did you notice, by the way, it's funny, on a Monday where I was sort of lamenting the fact that none of the boxing media credited me for the Francis. And by the way, is there anything more annoying than media guys whining about not being credited? The point is, and I don't know if there is anything more annoying. So I'm not trying to be that guy. But I have also criticized Happy Punch for not crediting us when taking our videos and whatnot. And what did I do in the tweet? Not the second tweet. I'm trying to set a standard here. I'm trying to show the other media guys this is how it's done. It is not a bad look to credit. In fact, it's a good look to credit. Second line, first reported by Happy Punch. Nothing wrong with that. Okay? What's right is right. Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, which... Shout out to one of our loyal listeners, Polymath, who sent me a message last week saying, I'm trying to put the pieces together. Every time you talk about Nate and Jorge, you say they're not going to fight at UFC 300 or in the UFC next. Are they going to fight each other in a boxing match? He nailed it. And I left him on scene because I didn't want to say anything. But I've known about this fight for a while, in the works, was asked not to report on it. And so I have to respect that off the record. You got to be a vault. It's in the works and hoping to get finalized quite soon for later on this year. boxing match, not MMA, Masvidal, Diaz, Masvidal 2. Rick, your level of interest?
Not very high. 5.
5 out of 5, not bad. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Would have preferred it in MMA, and even then, like,
Right.
not that interested. So not very interested.
I saw some people saying, like, I would have taken this on 300.
Sure.
You're shaking you're agreeing, GC.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
I'm with Rick. I would have rather seen it in MMA than in boxing. The boxing interest, I mean, takes it down several notches.
Really?
Does it not for you? You're just as excited for a boxing match as you would an MMA match?
The number one fight, if you could tell me right now, like, what's your number one scenario for Nate Diaz, it would be an MMA fight against Dustin Poirier.
All right.
Not Connor.
Well, because, like I said, I would like to see the Chandler thing play out. Just what right is right.
Oh, I see. Because of the timing of it, and Dustin could have been available. Okay, fair enough.
And I really like Dustin versus Nate as a fight, and there's a pretty long, rich history there, but it's not happening. So yeah, so obviously, like, I think I've said this before. Like, I want to see. It's the same thing I said about Cris. Like, I want to see her fight Pacheco more than, it's just what's more interesting when it comes to their careers at this juncture. Do I hate it? No, not at all. Do I like it better than Nate versus random 170-pound boxer? Yeah, because at least there's a story there, and they're kind of both on equal footing. So I'm curious. I'm curious about the card, the rest of the card, who else they're going to put on there, and what this all means. But again, the Venn diagram is growing, and boxing is becoming this nice little, this way for these fighters on the back end of their career to make some money, and I don't hate that as well.
It used to be, though, like Jake Paul, right? Boxer or influencer versus MMA guy. Now it's just like two MMA guys boxing. Like, that's not that interesting. Like, the more this continues to happen, the more this becomes that. Like, just do MMA. It's not that interesting.
Well, contractually, they can't do MMA unless it's with the UFC, and then there's less money to be made.
Hey, listen, get your bag. That part I'm not judging for. But if you're asking me just objective interest, it's not that interesting. But completely understand. Yeah, if it's not going to happen in the UFC and it can't be MMA, then get your money, get paid for sure.
All I'll say is, like, starting from this pay-per-view on January 20th, there's a stretch of several weeks here where there's like a fun fight almost every weekend. February 17th and 24th and March 2nd and March 8th and March 9th and UFC 300 and this. I mean, it's WrestleMania, The Rock. It's going to be a fun stretch, not to mention the stuff that isn't announced yet. So let's see. Rory's stories. Happy New Year to you and the guys. Looking ahead to the rest of this year, I'd love to get your take on the likelihood of a few scenarios in a game of this or that. In this scenario, what is most likely in 2024? McGregor to fight twice or Dustin to have his last UFC fight? Well, one thing that isn't being talked about enough is McGregor only has 2 fights left on his UFC contract. And I do think that we're going to approach, if he does get this fight on June 29th, a scenario where the UFC is going to want to drag their feet in giving him this last fight. I don't know how many fights Dustin has left, but I don't think he's close to the end. So I would say there's a better chance of McGregor having 2 fights than Dustin having his last UFC fight. Nate Diaz to fight in the UFC or Jake Paul to fight in MMA? Those are 2 tough ones. I'd say the latter. No, I'd say the former. I'd say Diaz in the UFC. Jon Jones to retire without fighting Tom Aspinall or Kayla Harrison to fight in the UFC. Better chance Kayla Harrison for sure. I think fighting the UFC, although both of those are pretty tough. I think ultimately Jones does fight Aspinall. Call me crazy. Sean Strickland to go the year undefeated or Sean Strickland to having to do an apology tweet for going too far. I don't see that happening. So I guess a year undefeated, which he just did. And then Ariel to watch an entire slap fight card or Ariel's MMA Journalist of the Year win streak to end. I don't know. All I'll say is, slap fight card, forget card, match. Is that what they're called? Are they called a match or is it a slap fight? What is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the terminology, but you're right to ask. I don't know what they are considered. I guess fight because the commission is overseeing them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Kai. And by the way, did we ever talk? I think we did talk about the California thing, right? I think
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see what happens there. It's just it's a provisional licensing, meaning they only get it for one event, and then they will look into it and see how it all goes. Kai. Greetings, Ariel and crew. We've seen in the past Saudi Arabia demanding big stars for their WWE shows, Undertaker, Goldberg, etc. And given the close relationship with Francis that he has with Saudi, do you think there's any potential for Saudi to demand him on a future UFC Saudi show, which would open up the possibility of a return? No. I think they're very happy having him in this business, and they can't force him to go and sign with the UFC, and they can't force the UFC. It's different. Taker and Goldberg and those guys are under contract with WWE. Francis, not under contract with WWE. Someone else had a nice...
Also, by the way, didn't the Saudi government or whoever have a stake in PFL? Francis fights for PFL. They could just get Francis.
I'm not sure which group it is. I don't know if it's like an independent group within or...
Yeah, there's like Saudi investment. I don't know what the...
It's all very confusing. But yeah, they're not going to force
that's an easier route.
Right, of course. Yeet Defender, I'm in the process of changing jobs. Just wanted to thank you and the team for all the work you put in. You've cut my new guy anxiety in half. Just being able to relax on the way into and home from work. Thank you for all that you do. It means a lot. I appreciate that. That's very nice. And good luck to you, Yeet Defender. You got this. I know what that feeling is like. It's not the most fun. But a week in and you're like, I feel like I've been here for 6 months. Brandon, hey, Ariel and crew. In a year that was very busy for me due to a new job, getting married, and just overall life, I'm sad to say, despite MMA being far and away my favorite sport, I have fallen off in fandom. For the first time in years, there were many fights that I missed and that I never prioritized watching after the fact. I also didn't watch a single Contender Series episode. All of this to say that you guys have been the one constant when it comes to this sport. Thank you for always entertaining and keeping us up to date. The work you all put in every week is greatly appreciated. How nice is that? I mean, that is incredible. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you can count on us. I had a bit of not an argument, a conversation with someone yesterday in the sport who was trying to tell me to have a fighter on the show who doesn't fight for the UFC. And he was saying, like, your job is to promote, the fighters in the sport. And I said, my job isn't to promote the fighters in the sport. My job is to cover the sport. And by a byproduct of covering the sport, talking about the sport for, on average, 4.5 to 5 hours every Monday, Wednesday here. And then my Ringer show and everything else, like we're talking about 11 to 12 hours, if not more, on a pay-per-view a week. And my job is to cover, and then my byproduct is promoting, but it's to cover the most newsworthy stuff. Like, I don't think that we should do charity here. We try to cover the sport in the most comprehensive and eclectic way possible, but there's only so many stories. There's one very dominant organization with many events and many fighters, and those are probably the most newsworthy fights and stories. And so I do my best. Anyway, they didn't really agree with my stance, obviously, because they wanted to have their guest on the show or their client on the show. But I feel like, I feel like we do our best. And it's funny when people say to me, like, oh, you just talk about the UFC. And then in the next breath, you get, oh, you hate the UFC. Like, which is it, guys? Which is it? The truth is, we just love MMA, love talking about the sport, love interviewing the fighters. And trust me, if we hated the UFC, I would have stopped doing this a hell of a long time ago. It's been a long-ass time doing this show in particular and just covering this sport. So I don't think you could fake it for this long. Krillix, hey, Ariel, I'm an emergency room doctor who has been listening to the MMA Hour and the Ringer for years, and I'm seriously impressed by how you juggle an amazing career and family life. I had the privilege of going to school at an Ivy League med school as well as training in a tough urban emergency room. So I consider myself an incredible hard worker. But as I grow older and enjoy my first year as a married man, I am realizing that we do all of this for family at the end of the day. Amen. Your achievements in sports journalism, especially being an MMA Journalist of the Year for 14 times. Congratulations, by the way. And just the range of your engagements from crossover boxing to now covering the Olympics. Again, congrats. Are truly inspiring. Most importantly, you emphasizing that you wouldn't go to Ngannou's boxing match because it was your daughter's birthday absolutely blew me away. I'm trying to find that sweet spot between my career and personal life too. And you seem to have nailed it. I don't know if I have, but we try. What tips do you have when it comes to balancing it all without dropping the ball? How do you stand at the top of your industry, but also constantly prioritize your family? If Rick, GC, Frank, or anyone else on the team have thoughts as well, I would appreciate it. Keep up the fantastic work and hoping to hear y'all's wisdom. What a thoughtful, nice comment / question. Congratulations on getting married. For me, before I got married and then early on before we had kids, I realized like this is a time to really work. And also you're kind of in the formative years of your career. So you're not really like thinking, you're just doing. 80% of success is just showing up, be omnipresent, be the best you could be tenacious, be aggressive, be obsessive, be passionate, all that stuff. And then there's, a trickle-down effect. Once I had kids, you have to make decisions, and you realize that there are more important things in life than event X. I missed Jones-Evans, UFC 145 in Atlanta, because my wife's due date was a few weeks away, and I couldn't even fathom the idea of missing the birth of my my first child. It didn't happen that weekend, but I couldn't miss it or even take the chance. And that was like the first time I had to make one of these decisions. And on it went. Like I said, I don't want to miss a birthday. I don't want to miss big occasions. I don't want to miss big soccer games. I'm dreading trips when I know that I have to miss something, a play, a recital or something like that, a soccer game. And so it's honestly going to come pretty easy to you. You are going to realize what matters most. You are going to realize when you do miss something how you feel, and you're not going to want to feel that again. And then as your kids get older, you're going to realize that you're not going to want to disappoint them. You're not going to want to have to look them in the face and say, I'm going to have to miss this. That's the worst feeling. And you're going to realize that there's more. You're going to realize that in the moment, trust me, when I was watching Francis and Tyson, I had FOMO on that day, but I also went to my daughter's soccer game and she scored 2 goals and we had cake and we had a good time. And by the time the fight was over, I was like, all right, I missed it. Hopefully I'll be at the next one. You just have to decide what's most important. And I know and I recognize that one day my kids are going to be out of this, out of our home, and they're going to be adults and hopefully have their own families and success and all that. And they won't want me at their birthday party, or they won't want to have dinner with me, or they won't want me to come to their event, or whatever it is. And I'm going to regret missing those days. And I don't want to have any regrets. And trust me, I would regret that a hell of a lot more than missing a fight. That will come and go. And there'll be another one and another one and another one. There's only going to be one 6th birthday. There'll only be one big whatever. And so that, you just have to balance. And part of the reason why I wanted this show to be so successful is that I didn't have to go to everything and chase and be on the road and all that stuff. And trust me, there are some road trips coming up, and some I'm excited about and some I'm lamenting. But you have to balance it and be successful and realize that you're doing this to support your family, and also realize that sometimes your family needs you and you want to be there, and sometimes you have to go away because it all comes back to them. It's nothing I ever talk to anyone about. You just kind of figure it out and you find the sweet spot, and you'll find your own sweet spot. And maybe you'll mess up and then you'll correct things and you'll get back on track. But I've never been able, that's why I always ask Eddie about it. Like, how do you do it, man? I've never been able to wrap my head around that. As much as I've traveled, the idea of being away every weekend and missing things is just not a life that I could live with. It's not a reality that I can come to terms with. Once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3-4 weeks, we could live with that for now. Because the truth is, there's going to come a time where no one's going to want me to go anywhere. And I'm going to be some old fogey that people are going to say, like, remember that guy, hopefully. So, important to take those opportunities now, but also to not miss out on the good stuff. And you just have to balance. You just have to be able to find that sweet spot. Let's try to get to a shorter one here because we just have a few minutes left. James, you got to be handy with the steel if you know what I mean. Earn your keep. Yeah, shout out to Warren G and Nate Dogg. Love it. Greetings, Ariel. After watching your interviews with Tim Welch, I'm curious if you have implemented a morning routine. I know you are commuting into the city as I do for my work. What practices have you found helpful after waking in the morning? That's a great question because I'm blown away by those routines and I ask about them. And I would be lying if I didn't say that, I'm always very good at keeping them. One thing that I'm trying to do is not look at the phone upon waking up right away. I'm trying to eat very healthy. I've had like some digestion problems where I'm trying to figure out like what affects me, what doesn't affect me. I'm really like being very mindful of how I feel after I eat everything. I like to do some sort of exercise at least Monday through Friday in the morning. Perfect world Saturday too, but if I skip those 2 days, that's cool. I like to box. These days it's Tuesday, Thursday, getting sometimes the Friday. Last week I got Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which was an amazing week, and I felt so good by the end of Friday night. Tired, like the sort of like, when you're tired and you're sore, that feeling, that's a great feeling. I love that feeling when you feel like you've accomplished something. So yeah, am I journaling? Am I meditating? No, I'm drinking a lot more tea. I like peppermint tea. I heard it's good for your stomach. So I'm doing that. And we're all just figuring out life. Just want to be happy. Just want to be content, healthy, all those things. Jared, what's up, crew? After watching Monday night's national title game and all the various broadcasts that they have on ESPN, I was wondering how cool this would be if they did it for a UFC pay-per-view. I know GC and friends currently do watch parties, but what if customers could switch streams and get play-by-play or analysis from current, former fighters, personalities, coaches, fans of the sport? One of the first things I pitched when I got to ESPN was that a Manning cast for UFC pay-per-views of Chael and I, Ariel and the bad guy. And it would have been great because they had the rights. So you can do it. Like the perfect thing is how McAfee has it or Stephen A has it, where you can see the broadcast and then also get the sidebar stuff as opposed to two screens, right? But obviously there were politics and issues and whatnot. So it didn't really work out. There was some talk. One thing that I think would actually do very well is a Manning cast, second screen type of thing that this gentleman is talking about for WWE pro wrestling, where you're not getting like the kayfabe broadcast, but you're getting two individuals talking about yesteryear, nostalgia, and guests are coming in. This is something that I think would be a box office idea, like on Peacock or something like that. But yes, I do think it would be fun. I think for UFC, it's so intense and people love the broadcasters so much. And it's like the commentary is part of the fight. It's just so, there's so much anxiety. It's not like, oh, let's watch, third down and shoot the shit in a blowout. Colby Covington and Leon Edwards are about to get into the cage and knock each other's heads. Like you almost want to be locked in. That's why I feel like it would be perfect for pro wrestling. Where if you're like an older fan and you don't want to you want to watch, but you're more of an old school Laps fan, you want the nostalgia, you want to see Stone Cold come in for a match, you want to talk to this guy, you want to talk to that guy, Bret Hart pops. Like, I think that would be tremendous. I think that would be fun. Ariel, congrats on the Olympic gig. In my opinion, no bigger stage in sports. Thank you. Are there any non-mainstream sports you're excited to go watch or athletes you're looking forward to speaking with? Certainly a lot of the Canadian athletes, but I'm excited for all of it. And Canadian basketball is going to be huge, but get me some ping pong action. Get me some swimming, some whatever, skateboarding. I love the Olympics. I love like the nationalism, the patriotism, the hoopla. And this is going to be such a big one. First time in about 100 years, Paris hosts the Olympics. First non-COVID Olympics since 2016. I just feel like it's going to be such a celebration of life. I can't wait to be there. What type of music do you listen to? Can you give us your top bands of all time? Hope all is well and looking forward to you and the boys every week. Growing up, it was all about hip hop for me, like in my teens. Warren G was one of my favorites. Tupac was one of my favorites. Biggie was one of my favorites. Shout out to these gentlemen. I loved the Fugees. I loved Wyclef. I loved Corrupt. I loved Nas. I loved all of that. Wu-Tang, of course. Eminem later on. As I got a little bit older, I really started to listen to, I had a bit of a hippie stage where I liked Bob Dylan and
Did you ever listen to like rock and roll?
I never, later in life, I was more are you talking about like Leonard Skinner and stuff like
I
that?
mean, just based on your age, like you missed the whole grunge thing. With
Yeah.
Nirvana, Alice in Chains, all of that.
Not missed it. I was aware of it.
No, that's
grew
what I
up-
mean.
Yeah, but
I'm
it
sorry
wasn't
to
my
say
thing.
missed.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my
it wasn't
bias.
wasn't my thing.
All right. More of like a Rat fan.
Rat. What does that mean?
That was like a hair metal band from the
Oh no,
late
no.
80s.
But later, I've liked a lot of UK rap, and now I'm listening to the stuff that my kids listen to sometimes. Listening to a lot of Hebrew music, if I'm being honest, and just eclectic nonsense. But you always go back to the stuff you grew up with, 90s, 80s. It's tremendous, and a lot of the Substack titles are, in reference. Like the one of yesterday was "You Can't Be Any Geek Off the Street." Do you know where that's from, Frank?
Sorry, I was engaged in another conversation. Wow. It was a technical one.
It's twice now. I just throw it to you guys.
What was... Oh, really?
Well, it was GC earlier. You can't be any geek off the street. Do you know where that line is from?
I do not.
All right. Well, so be it. Joe. Hi, Ariel. Been a longtime fan. Been watching the UFC since they came to Newcastle for UFC 80. What was the main event? Top of your head, Rick. Main event, UFC 80.
Yeah, right. Come on.
BJ Penn?
No chance.
BJ Penn?
Oh, okay. So what would that be?
BJ
That would
Penn.
be...
It's in It was in January, if my memory serves me correct, but I know.
What was Shirk? Like 80 something
84? 84?
Yeah, so the one before that. Oh man, it's slipping my mind.
Lick the gloves. Lick the gloves.
No, because
Say it.
I don't know it.
Big Daddy.
It's the Stevenson one? That was in Newcastle?
Yeah.
Why did I think that was stateside? Man, I'm getting
Spike
freaking old,
TV.
huh?
Spike TV.
The name of that one, do you know?
The names are tough. First of all, am I right that it was January? It was mid-January?
Correct. January 19th, 2008. In Newcastle, BJ Penn, Joe Stevenson.
Yeah. Spike TV afternoon card.
Wow, sign me up for that.
Non-pay-per-view. Numbered.
Sign me up.
It's like on the tip of my tongue. Is it possible resurrection?
Starts with an R.
Okay, so I see the R. Revolution?
Rapid Fire.
Yeah, rapid fire's tough. Yeah.
I would have been incredibly impressed if you remembered the name of
There's
it.
some that I remember. But yeah, those are hard to remember. Okay, 2 questions. Who's the greatest Hawaiian of all time? Has Max now surpassed BJ? Wow, I feel like this is a question right up EJ's alley.
Yes,
Max has surpassed him.
he has. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think he's reached like the highest highs that BJ reached in terms of like the legacy. Like I think BJ's one of these guys that still kind of comes up in the greatest lightweight of all time conversation, just because he was so great at his peak. But man, the body of work is hard to argue against for Max. I'd have to give it to Max at this point.
Question 2.
The longevity just seals it for me, for Max.
So this gentleman, Joe, says we saw motivated BJ that night. Question 2, who's the best mythical fighter in MMA? Is it TRT, Vitor, C-Level, Kane? Apologies for the hyperbole, but it's what we do in MMA, right? Maybe York Ric can weigh in on this. As I recall, he shares a love for the prodigy.
Motivated BJ was a
BJ's
tough one.
TRT Vitor was like a freaking cartoon character.
I think it's maybe no surgery Dricus, like able to breathe Dricus Duplessis. That one's pretty
I'm going with
impressive.
TRT Vitor. There's Sea Level Kane. There was another Blonde Brunson.
Yeah, what are some of the old Sherdog ones? Man, I can't remember anything. It's pretty sad.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of this stuff.
Here's a question for GC from Andre. My question is for GC. You said that one of your favorite sports in the Olympics was handball. That made me curious. Since the European Championship is starting today, are you putting some bets down? Everybody thinks Denmark is going to win. Who is your dark horse? Go Iceland. P.S. It is going to be record-breaking attendance for a handball match during the Germany versus Switzerland game with 55,000 people. Kind regards, Andre.
I'm not going to lie. This is the best news I've received all week. So we're talking Euros for the handball?
No. Oh, yes. Euros. Yeah.
Euros handball? I mean, how can I, like, I'm sitting on a Denmark jersey behind me. I know this is this is football, this is soccer, but I mean, I have a special place in my heart looking exactly like Christian Eriksen. I'm actually trying to find odds right now. Maybe lay some
Any luck?
some cheddar down. I don't see any right now, but I'm gonna keep searching. I think I can find some.
I do love when there's things like 55,000 people care about Germany versus Switzerland, and you will
You ever
not
watched handball?
No, but like I love it that you won't like it's so big there, and I find it fascinating that you won't hear a peep about it here.
Yeah.
How's that possible? How could something be so big, not that far away from us, still in the Western Hemisphere, but yet no one cares about it here? How's that possible?
The Euros start today.
Today. Well, it could have been yesterday because he wrote this yesterday.
Yeah, I'm trying to find odds. See if I can find something. I mean, how do we watch this? Is this like PFL Europe? We can't watch it?
Maybe DAZN? They seem to have an eclectic mix. All right, we'll get back to that. But are you interested in watching it?
Yeah, I mean, I love watching it. It's so fun. It's all action. Yeah, look at this. Slovenia, minus 550 against the Faroe Islands. I've located the odds.
Wow. Where is it?
Oh, yeah. Now we got the futures. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, Group D winner, Norway, minus 150. Denmark, minus 2,500 to win Group F.
Is this a legit site?
Yeah. I mean, I could play.
Is it DraftKings?
No.
Okay.
But DraftKings will probably have Olympic odds.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Stay tuned for more. Speaking of which, salut Ariel and team from Ausch. Happy New Year. Can we get some of your thoughts on the darts final, Luke Humphrey's composure to win the cup, and Littler's run, and what it has done for the sport? I mean, it's unbelievable. Over 4 million. Littler's in the Premier League. Everyone's buzzing about it. The question is, can they sustain this over the year, or are they okay with the crescendo during the championship and then it just kind of settling in? Either way, monumental weekend and stretch for the sport. I love it. I started getting into the sport after you beat Michael Smith in the studio last year. If you'd close out this question with your best 180 impression of Russ Bray, that'd be great. I love when they say, the most impressive thing to me is how they do the math so quickly. You know what I mean? How do they do it so fast? The other most impressive thing to me is the director knowing exactly where they're going to go. You know, like they zoom in on the AAA teams. Like, how did you know that? How did you know he wasn't going to go somewhere else?
They're probably darts players.
It's just amazing to me. I love it. It's great to see. I genuinely enjoy it. I got my kids into it. I picked them up. I was like, he made it to the final. He lost the final. And they were into it too. And then I was asking their friends and they got embarrassed. I was like, did you guys see Luke Littler? And they're like, no one watches this other than you. I was like, you're missing out. That's what I've become. Oscar, howdy Ariel and crew. MJF was removed from the AEW roster after the new year. Many believe it's just part of a storyline and that MJF will return to AEW. What is your take on this, and where do you believe MJF can prosper more in WWE or as the perennial face and superstar for AEW? I mean, I think he's going to be treated as the top dog in AEW, but I think there's a bit of a Michael Chandler effect if he went to WWE, meaning bigger stage, bigger platform, bigger machine, he would level up. But for now, he's still so young. If he's happy and comfortable and content there, which I think he is, wouldn't be surprised if he sticks around. What a stretch for AEW and WWE. I get on Twitter last night and I see everyone like weighing in on this craziness with these tweets and Jinder Mahal and Tony Khan and Eric Bischoff and Dave Meltzer and Oof, it's a lot of drama. Golly. You guys see any of this? Did any of this cross your radar? Maybe Rick's radar? I doubt GC's. You didn't even know The Rock came back.
Not even one tweet.
Nothing.
No,
Nothing.
didn't hit me.
Total, like, hysteria. Talking about the ratings and all this stuff.
Sounds like it.
I weighed in with just a cheeky little gif, which, most fans enjoyed, but some said that I was just being a bootlicker, which is fine.
I think I might have seen the GIF.
The
I
Jinder
saw
Mahal
that,
gif.
but I didn't
get the reference.
understand what it
I had
was.
no
No.
clue. I was-
Yeah, because Tony was ripping Jinder, and then he was going back and forth, and Jinder had a fire tweet,
Got
and it was just,
Got it.
it was
Yes,
madness.
No, I get it. Yeah.
One guy said that I am contributing to the tribalism in pro wrestling, that I am a big factor.
It's your fault.
It's me. The last pro wrestling event that I covered in person was in July, and I don't even know if I covered it. I was there doing interviews for BT, haven't done anything since. Don't talk about it that much on the show, but it's my fault.
What we've learned today is you control everything. Earlier, somebody asked you about, you control the UFC via how this show is going on. Somebody implied that you control the sport because you don't highlight this person or do highlight this person. Now you're controlling wrestling. You have a lot of influence in this world, is what we've learned today.
I appreciate that. Thank you for saying this. Brantley,
I have to acknowledge it.
I appreciate that. Hi, Ariel. When you've got these rabbit in your hat fights, like about 300, do you ever tell New York Ric or GC off air? Are you ever dying to tell them what you know during the conversations on the show? I'd say they're pretty trustworthy with that kind of info. Do I tell you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you say something and sometimes you don't. Most of the time, if it's, something we should know.
I feel like I told you a long time ago about Masvidal Diaz.
Yeah, we've known about that one for a minute.
Shalom, Ariel, GC, Rick. Rick, again, longtime listener, first-time questioner. With over a quarter of a season being played in the NBA, are we all happy with your teams and their trades? I'm a Suns fan since 08 and I had high hopes for this year. Not the greatest start. Thank you. Take care, fellas. I mean, how about them Knicks? How about them Knickerbockers, huh? OG? He's
Are
unbelievable.
we still shedding tears over?
I'm not shedding tears. I just,
over Quickly and RJ Bum.
There's
the freaking scrub.
There's still some separation anxiety, but he's been unbelievable. And did you see his post-game interview yesterday where he kept holding on to the microphone? There was something so endearing about it and his answers and his delivery. But most importantly, I think he's like a plus 130 since joining the team. They're 5-0. It's pretty remarkable. So yes.
I love what the Knicks have done. I'll say that. And to be honest, I wouldn't lose hope as a Suns fan either. I think the Suns are going to be there at the end.
I think they'll be okay.
It's rough sledding now, but how often has the full starting lineup that it's going to be actually played together? KD's having a hell of a season. I'm pretty confident the Suns will be there at the end. Shout out to Shaheen Al-Shadi. The Cavs, I mean, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. Like, I'm not thrilled. I love what they were able to do in the offseason. Max Strus is a beast. I love Max Strus. But, man, I just think it's time to trade Donovan Mitchell. Like, just get some young pieces in there and start building towards something, because it's just redundant with Garland. Mitchell's got value. There's teams that want him. Trade his ass and let's start
the Knicks.
Sure, I think that's a horrible fit for the Knicks, but if the Knicks are willing to give up something good, I'll take it. Hell, give me OG. Trade OG to the Cavs and take Donovan Mitchell. I'll do a 1-for-1 swap right now.
Top of your head right now, GC, can you tell us where the Hawks sit in the Eastern Conference?
Number, I don't know, like 11th or 12th. Aren't they like 14 and 21?
Wow. Did you look that up?
No.
Are they going to trade DeJounte Murray?
I don't know.
He plays for the Spurs.
I mean, you
just
got
kidding.
Me there.
He plays for the Hawks.
You got me there.
He did play for the Spurs, though.
I did know that he played for the Spurs, yeah. Listen, when your team's not good, you don't need to pay attention.
That's true. I agree.
You know that.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I agree with you.
When they come back into the limelight, I'll start paying attention.
How about this one? We were talking about it off air at the beginning of the show.
What about Frank?
Oh, Frank. Well, who's Frank's team?
The Suns.
Frank's Sun fan?
Or is it the Rockets?
I thought more of a Rockets guy.
I thought you were a Nets guy.
Oh, Rockets are having a nice year.
They are having a nice year. Aren't you a Nets guy?
I don't think I could name one
Ever
player on
since
the
Yao
Rockets.
Ming.
James Harden?
Yeah.
No.
Oh
boy.
Frank,
for a few years.
You rep the Rockets?
Yep.
You in DC?
Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, I knew
No,
we had a
DC
long
doesn't
time.
rep the Rockets anymore.
That's his team.
Pelicans.
Doesn't he have some new team that's winning more
Nah.
basketball games? He's the worst
That's his
bandwagoner in
gimmick.
sports.
That's his gimmick. But
He doesn't rep the Pelicans, New Orleans.
No, because
Zion?
when he grew up, the Pelicans didn't exist.
Yeah, I figure your city gets a team, you kind of jump on board.
Nah.
He's not a
He was gone.
Wolves fan by this point.
He was gone. He was gone.
Yeah, well, my guy Anthony Edwards.
He's great.
Repping the G, baby.
He's great. Samuel asks, why no love for Toronto? $2.99 is stacked. What went wrong? You were mentioning this at the top of the show or when we got in.
Yeah, main
Toronto,
event's cool, but like
you feel like it's leaving a little bit to be desired. Strickland, Drew Plessis, Pennington,
great
MBS,
title fight.
AAA, Movsar.
Love it. Can't wait for it.
It's such a tough fight. Who's the favorite in that fight?
Mosar, but not a huge favorite. Like minus 140.
Mike Malott against Neil Magny. And then there's a bit of a drop off, but like you can't say that this is worse than the Vancouver card. This is pretty in line with what the Canadian pay-per-views are. No?
I think people are just looking at 298 and 299 and 300 and being like,
299 is
hey.
legit insane. I know, like,
Yeah, I don't know
97
why
people
299 is
tweeted
up.
it yesterday and was just like, 299 is incredible. It really is incredible. It's
No, it is incredible.
almost every fight is incredible.
Worth noting, they were supposed to get Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic. Fortunately, that fell through. They were all supposed to get Dominic Reyes, Carlos Ulberg.
Yeah.
Solid fights that fell through that would have made the card a little bit better.
Brackettona, double tough champ, ultimate fighter.
Jasmine.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz Divizius.
Opening the card. Getting
Yeah.
that Canadian crowd going. Plus, there's a chance we get the Canadian magic again.
What would that be? How many fights?
Oh, yeah, I think it's like 9 this time. What'd they do last time? Go 6-0?
Yeah. So let me see. Is there any Canada on Canada? So there's Jasmine 1, Charles Jourdain 2.
Jazz Divizius.
Yeah. Johan Lainez 3, Malcolm Gordon 4, Marc-Andre Barrio 5, Serhi City 6, Jillian Robertson 7, Brad Katona 8. Yo, by the way, Mike Malott 9, Arnold Allen. Okay, up until the last 3 fights, every single
Canadian.
card is Canada versus the world.
Yeah, I love it.
This is actually incredible. I didn't realize that it went down like this. Up
Last-
until the 3 most important fights at the top. And I'm going to include Arnold in Canada.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Honorary Canadian.
Yeah.
They did it with Belbita
Yeah.
on 289.
10 out of the 12 fights on this card feature Canada versus the world. This is pretty amazing. So you'd have
Okay.
to go 10-0.
Yeah, now let's go through it. Lioness is a favorite. Jasdavicius is a big favorite. Jillian Roberts is a favorite. C-Day is a favorite. Charles Jourdain is a favorite. MAB is an underdog. Who else we got? Brad Katona is a favorite. Mike Malott's a favorite. Is there anyone else I'm missing?
AAA?
yeah, what's Allen?
Triple A is an
You said
underdog.
he's a slight dog, right?
Plus 145 now. Wow. A little bit of line movement there. So most of them, of the 10, if we're counting Arnold Allen, 8 of them are favorites.
What do you think that that parlay is?
Pretty hefty. I mean, we could find out.
Is it like a plus 1,000 or more?
way?
Because it's so
more.
many legs, right?
Way
We're doing,
more.
we're doing all 10.
Yeah.
I mean, let's find out right now. MAB, Jourdain, Katona, C-Day, Robertson, Lioness, Jasdavicius. Who am I missing? Arnold Allen, Mike Malott. Is that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm missing one, but right now we're at plus 8,900.
Oh, wow.
Who am I missing? Malcolm Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus 15,913.
Jesus.
Perfect.
Worth it. Put a fiver on that.
Put a $5 on it, $5 Canadian dollars.
Dr. Tom. Hello, Ariel and friends. A few questions regarding TV rights. I love this. If UFC does not reach a deal with ESPN after 2025, what network do you see being interested in their product? What would be the backup plan? God, who knows where we're at, but, is Amazon a player? Is Apple a player? I personally think they re-sign with ESPN in some way, shape, or form. With PFL re-signing with ESPN, he asks, is this an indicator of either direction of UFC staying or leaving? Not necessarily. I think it's good for ESPN to have them as the backup, but no, I think in a perfect world, ESPN keeps UFC and PFL. UFC has been huge for ESPN Plus, built ESPN Plus, and PFL does well for them. So, no, I think it's a good spot to be in. With rumors of WWE speaking with WBD and Amazon, do you have any bold prediction on which entity will get the rights to Monday Night Raw for their next deal? I've heard Amazon. I've heard FX, and FX is under the Disney umbrella, and they've had a very nice relationship with Disney over the last few years, so that would make a lot of sense as well. So my guess would be Amazon or FX would be my guess. And if you're asking why not ESPN, I just don't think that they have the real estate with so many live sports on Monday night, especially with Monday Night Football and whatnot. Should TKO try to distribute UFC Fight Pass with an on-demand streaming service similar to WWE's deal with Peacock? I think they will try to do that. Mark Shapiro of TKO even hinted at that when he spoke at that conference recently. So I think they're 100% going to try to package that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they attempt to package WWE and UFC together. I think that would make a lot of sense for them too. Our old friend TST asks, who's your favorite fighter to watch interviews of? Can't be your own interviews. Has to be someone else conducting them. Wow. Would that have to be MMA? I'll be honest, I don't watch, who am I forget? I don't watch a ton of MMA interviews, if I'm being honest. Who's a fighter that I will... I mean, obviously you have to watch when Conor speaks, right? Because it's just always so big, and he's such a big deal in the sport and entertaining to listen to and watch. Jones doesn't speak often. You guys got O'Malley? Do you guys have a name? I listened to Tom Aspinall on with True Geordie. I enjoyed that conversation. Yeah. Listen, I'm listening to a lot of boxing these days, and I obviously love listening to Chris Eubanks Sr. speak. Tyson is a fun listen. I like AJ these days. I'm liking this version of AJ. Do you guys have a name, an MMA fighter that you love listening to or that you enjoy? Izzy? I think Izzy is a good one. You guys aren't giving me anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've asked you like 5 times. I don't get a single. I'm not even getting
I listen to a lot of interviews
acknowledgement.
sitting right here, so I'm kind of like you. I don't go seek out a ton of MMA interviews outside of this.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to 10 a week.
Yeah, no, I know. Was there another
100
one?
episodes last year.
How many?
We did 100 episodes last year.
Wow.
What was the final count, Frankie? 96?
97.
97.
Adam, hi Ariel, Frank, GC, and Rick. Happy New Year. I missed you all over the break. Thank you for breaking the big fight news about Francis versus Joshua. You're welcome. Of all the recent announcements, I'm wondering which fight are you most excited for between Ngannou, Joshua, Olivera, Tsarukyan, Poirier, Saint-Denis, and Masvidal's boxing debut versus Diaz. Also, I'm a big Steelers fan, so good luck this Sunday. May the best team win. Yes, sad to hear about TJ Watt. You want them at full strength. I like our chances in this game. Am Yisrael Chai, he says. Am Yisrael Chai, I say back. Man, that's a tough... I probably Joshua Ngannou just because of the magnitude of it. But, I mean, Olivera, Tsarukyan, and Poirier Saint-Denis is gigantic. I have another one in my back pocket. But if I say it, everyone's just going to, aggregate it and, go crazy. Well, I'll save it for later. Which one? I'll probably go with Ngannou Joshua. What is your take from Boris on your old friend Pat McAfee's relationship with your former employer, ESPN? Is he overplaying the hand he got, and how will you see it ending? Oh, gosh. What do we do, guys? What do we do? How do we tackle this one? It's a fascinating story to watch and see unfold. I will say that the one thing that I find fascinating about the Aaron Rodgers component in all of this is Rodgers continues to say that he's being silenced and they're attempting to cancel him and whatnot, and yet he has the biggest platform in sports every week, Disney, ESPN, not just YouTube, but ESPN at times, to say all kinds of wacky things that don't really pertain to sport. And all three of us know, and especially the time that we were there a few years ago, Like they really wanted us to stick to sports. And I mean, I remember getting scolded for going on my own personal Instagram to talk about why Gina Carano's memes comparing Republicans in 2020 to Jews in Nazi Germany was offensive, not wanting her to get canceled or punished or anything like that, just trying to to explain our vantage point. I got scolded for that. And that was on my own personal platform. This is on their platform. I don't think that you can get away with talking about, executives and whatnot on their own platform like that. But I'll say this. I think that ESPN has to make this decision. This is my take on it. Pat McAfee is the biggest star in sports media. He's incredible at what he does. He has an amazing show and an amazing following. I don't think Pat McAfee necessarily needs ESPN. I think if they told him today to, take a hike, let's part ways, he's fine. He turns on YouTube tomorrow. He'll get 200,000 people watching and crazy sponsors and will live a very good and probably drama-free life. Doesn't have to deal with any of this. And that was part of the charm, right? But he accepted some of this drama and red tape and corporate culture when he did the deal with ESPN because he wanted to, not have to deal with the booking and some of the business stuff. He spoke openly about this. And so for the most part, it seems like it's been a symbiotic relationship. And I don't know about the ratings and what's true and what's not. But I would say that he has benefited from being on their network on game day, at the Rose Bowl, at the national championship. And they have benefited from being in business with him because he's so popular amongst sports fans, football fans, young fans. I think what they ultimately have to decide is, are they comfortable with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon circa 1999? In other words, someone on their roster, on their air, being somewhat anti-establishment and poking the bear at times, all sort of in somewhat good fun, but breaking that fourth wall and talking about the business and the executives and the network? Or do they want a ship that they could control, where everyone kind of stays in line and it's, the ESPN of old and you don't break that fourth wall and there's no drama and no one's bigger than the network? That's what you get with Pat. And people love that. People love the idea of someone being on the network telling the executives what they think of them. That's what made Stone Cold versus Austin so great. Everyone wants to tell their boss what they truly think of them. Do they want that? Are there enough people that are comfortable with that? Or will the old guard win out and say, nah, let's go back. We're cool with First Take and Get Up and the regular shows. This is a little bit too loosey-goosey. And I would say they've given him a lot of rope, what he's allowed to say and the dress and all that. And it's been great. I think it's really made ESPN a little bit cooler. I'm talking about his stuff. I'm not necessarily talking about Aaron because I don't think Aaron is necessarily an ESPN employee or anything like that. I view McAfee as the guy and Aaron's sort of a part of his orbit, so he gets to come along for the ride. But he doesn't necessarily need Aaron as much anymore. I know he's benefited greatly from having Aaron on. But, McAfee is so huge and so successful that he doesn't need Aaron. He doesn't need ESPN. That's where he's at right now. I think they just have to come to that conclusion. Are they comfortable with someone being anti-establishment on their air? Or do they need to have a little bit more control and not have the perception out there that the inmates, in particular his show, are running the asylum? I would suggest that the juice is worth the squeeze, but I'm not an executive. I'm not the one looking at the ratings. I'm not the one looking at the the sponsorship and all that stuff. What do anyone want to weigh in on this? Yeah.
I agree with everything you said. I have a question. Do you think they would be more concerned about that part, right? McAfee bucking the order and the establishment and kind of pushing back, or giving the platform to somebody like Aaron Rodgers? I'm not singling Aaron Rodgers out, but in this specific case, he caused some controversy on their platform. Do you think they're more concerned about that uncontrollable element or the McAfee versus ESPN?
I think it was
or both.
I think it was all well and good until McAfee spoke about the executive Norby Williamson. When
Yeah.
Aaron made things into a mess when he talked about Jimmy Kimmel, and what he said was very reckless, and Jimmy Kimmel has every right to be upset. And yesterday he didn't really apologize. And I know there's a long history between the two dating back to the COVID vaccine stuff and all that. So this was just another chapter in that. But I think it was fine. And ultimately, it's sort of like, to a degree, I know it's not the same, but like when Bryce Mitchell comes on the show and says some crazy stuff, he's just a guest coming on the show and we happen to be live. And are there going to be ramifications? Sure. But ultimately, no one who's a part of the show is saying it. Now, Rogers is different because he's a reoccurring guest, and no one's really quite sure what the arrangement is. Is it McAfee paying him? It's not ESPN. So he's not quite a full-time, but he's not just a one-off guest. So he's somewhere in the middle, which makes it a little bit more confusing. But ultimately, I think there's ways of getting around that. What I'm referring to when I say McMahon Austin is the stuff about Norby, and then even yesterday, what Aaron said about Mike Foss, who works at ESPN, who we used to work with, who we enjoyed working with very much and have a lot of respect for. So I think that's the part that they don't feel comfortable with. The other stuff, I think they could get around it. It's talking about what goes on in the offices, Bristol HQ, all that is what they could you imagine when we were there, someone speaking like that? It just would never happen.
It's ultimately more in their control too, right? Because they could put a mic in a coach's face and they could say the same thing as Aaron Rodgers live. So you kind of can't really control the other people, the other talent, but the ones that you're cutting the check for, then it becomes a difficult thing. It's super fascinating to me, this whole thing.
Anyone, maybe other than Stephen A, maybe, but I would say Pat has more power than Stephen A because he has the whole platform on YouTube, which Stephen A is building. Which I think is fascinating in its own right, while being an ESPN talent. Anyone other than Stephen A is probably fired the next day.
Yeah.
Pat is
that
so
day.
big.
I mean, that day.
Yeah.
The moment the broadcast is over. Bye.
Pat is so powerful and so popular, and credit to him, has this following on YouTube. He doesn't need it. Like, the guy will get numbers, and by the way, will benefit from this, because all he has to do, if this does sour, if this does fall apart, there's such an easy thing to do. You come back on the air the next day. I know you all were mad that we did the deal. We've listened to you. We've parted ways, and the old show is back, and the fans will be over the moon, right? Not
only is the old show back, but it's like the conservative talking head Tucker Carlson playbook. It's like they're the establishment. They tried to hold me down, and guess what? Now we're turning it around and we're taking it back, and it's ours now. And I feel like he'd have a lot of people rally behind that.
1,000%. He was in a tough spot because people blamed him for the layoffs because of the timing of the deal, and then they said that the show was going to change and all this. He would get all that back. Not to suggest that he should do this, but I'm saying the worst thing to happen here is they part ways, and then he becomes an even bigger babyface. That's the worst. So he's sitting in a good spot. Either or. They, I think, just have to decide what they want, which is going to be fascinating.
The fact that it's even a decision, though, to your point, is very interesting to me, because it seems like in a prior era, it wouldn't even be a conversation, right?
Yep.
It'd be like, we're shutting this down immediately. And the fact that they're not is super interesting to me.
Yeah, and I would boil that down to testament to just how successful and powerful he is, which is something they never really had to deal with. Somewhat reminiscent to Conor McGregor in the UFC. Conor gets away with a lot in terms of talking about the business, especially at the height of his popularity in 2016-17, where he talked about equity that no one else could get away with, getting the Mayweather fight, etc. Scott, good day, Ariel. Pittsburgh Steeler fan here, residing in Pittsburgh, and I'm here to tell you and Frank that you're going down this Sunday. All right, I like it. Fighting words. On to my question. Your stance on not bringing family and faith into fight promotion is something I've always agreed with. I do think that some fighters and online personalities took it too far with the comments directed at Ian Garry's family. However, I cannot help but find him playing the victim on Monday to be a bit hypocritical considering his comments on Magny and Neal. I credit you for pushing back a little, but he did seem to not think those things were equal. Since you have interviewed him on multiple occasions, do you think he's trying to play a heel at this point, or is he just out of touch? I don't know if it's either or. I think he believes what he is saying, and I don't think he's trying to play anything. But more on that in a moment. I'm a big fan of Ian and watching him fight, but I wasn't too happy with how he's used Neil Magny's family situation to promote a fight. You're the man, Scott F. So, Ian said on Monday that those guys obviously took it too far. And I asked him about the Neil Magny thing, and he said I was just using his words that he said at the press conference and highlighting them because I didn't agree with them. And I agree with everyone out there who says, well, you don't have to highlight them. You don't have to talk about it. Just because he said that, it doesn't mean you have to go there. I agree with that. I didn't like that. I didn't think that he should have gone there with Neil. And I think, especially now that he's dealing with all of this, one would hope that a light would go off and say, like, it's maybe not the best route to take. You didn't have to, like they really tried to hammer that Neil stuff, and it was a little bit uncomfortable. Now, I could sort of understand why he's thinking that it's not the same thing, because this is, he's talking about Neil, who he's fighting, as opposed to people talking about his wife, who has nothing to do with the actual fight. You know what I mean? He's talking about Neil Magny, who he's fighting, and his alleged behavior towards his kids. Ian's wife has nothing to do with an upcoming fight. That's his wife. She didn't say anything. It's just, people trying to talk about her or whatnot. So I understand kind of where he's coming from. But if it was up to me, like, just leave all that stuff out. And that's why I asked him that question about being a disruptor and about, the T-shirt and all that stuff. And I think ultimately it comes down to that. And it's the same with Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland said that DDP went too far. But my response to that would be like, what did you expect when you started commenting on everyone else's personal life? Did you not think that people were going to start commenting on yours? And I feel comfortable in saying, after seeing that interview with Theo Vaughn, I understand why Sean Strickland, to a degree, is why he is. And I feel for him. No kid should go through the stuff that he was talking about. Does it necessarily excuse the thing that he says? No, but it does make me understand and sympathize with him. I don't think Sean Strickland would say that about other people. Like, for example, if the roles were reversed and DDP went on an interview and started talking about his family and stuff, I think Sean Strickland the next day would be in his car doing a video being like, bro, stop crying. He would essentially do the same thing that Henry Cejudo said about him. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And so my point is, you put yourself out there in that light, you kind of have to reap what you sow. You talk about people's families, you talk about people's loved ones, it's going to come back to you. It just is. And it also lets your opponents know that this is fair game. Where it feels like a bridge too far is when a Colby talks about a Leon and his father, the way in which he did, when Leon never does that. Do you know what I mean? And so that felt to everyone like, hey, you can't do that. I don't think that DDP has gotten the backlash that Colby has because Sean speaks about people's families in instances where it's not really necessary for him to speak that way. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but all I'm saying is there's a trickle-down effect. Back to Ian, I wish if I were advising him, I wouldn't have told him to wear the T-shirt. I wouldn't have told him to talk about Neil's family and his words and kids and all that stuff. And I wonder if all this stuff would have happened. I wonder. Maybe it still does happen, but I wonder if it happens as much. I saw some people saying he was reading. I don't believe that he was reading. I knew that interview would get dissected and broken down and there would be responses and all. I knew that just by booking him, just because he's such a lightning rod now. As I said on Monday, I thought he came off relatively well. I thought he answered all the questions. They didn't ask me for the questions before. They didn't ask me to avoid things. They were as open and available. And there's not much that I would change. I've never left an interview thinking, I love that. I nailed that. I usually hate it. And there's certain things that I would ask differently. I've never had the perfect interview. I do love seeing people break down the interview when I've seen their interviews, and I know that, they couldn't, interviewing the first fight of the night, they don't do 1/10 as good a job as we do on this show. And so I love to hear their breakdown of what we should have said and shouldn't have said and done that. I love that. That's the best. I'm sure that's like the UFC listening to me say what they should do with their business practices. Everyone feels that way. So that's totally, totally fine. But for the most part, I would say the only thing that you can really open him up to is that. The rest, I felt like he handled it pretty damn well. I don't know if I'm missing anything. I feel like the only one, and it's a very fair criticism. It's the answer to the Neil Magny question or questions. But the rest, I feel like what and he's going to learn and he's going to evolve and he's still very young. I just think it's important for people to remember Ian Garry has not done anything illegal. He has not done anything unethical, immoral, or anything like that. You may think his family situation is this. You may think but like, he's not a criminal. So I don't know. It just seems weird that people have this obsession. But you can then say, well, if he didn't talk about other people or highlight their low points or do that, then he wouldn't be open to this. And that is fair. That is 100% fair. And I think he gets that. And I would hope that he gets that. And it's the same thing with Sean.
I feel like he made it pretty clear he gets that. No, I'm not understanding what the alternative side of this even is. Like,
Yeah.
I think
I think the big issue that people have is him saying the stuff that Sean has said or other people have said about my family is different than the stuff that I said about Neil.
Yeah, we're all liars. We all love drama. We all think something somebody else is doing is wrong until we have to be in that position and then we do it. The moralizing is just annoying. Like, he handled it pretty damn,
I thought so.
transparently and honestly and well, in my opinion, as somebody who was, not sure which way it would go and what
I
he
really
would
don't think
necessarily have to say.
Yeah, I don't think he was reading. I think he was just looking down and looking
No,
away.
definitely don't think that.
But
he
it's
was
just like
he was
these-
doing like a dramatic thing.
Yes,
He's like
yes.
looking down.
And also, if you've listened to his interviews, it's like the same delivery as always.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else would have been expected out of him. I came away thinking like, okay, done and dusted. Now we can move on.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Jordan, hello, Ariel. Easy question for you regarding the aforementioned rabbit in the hat. We got to print the T-shirts. Holloway versus Gaethje. That's not what I'm referring to. No. Okay, just a couple more here. Ariel, recent SBJ article made 2 bold predictions. ESPN and UFC will re-up. Agreed. Monday Night Raw goes to Amazon. Can see it. What do you think is more likely? I would say the former. Speaking of bold predictions, what are your bold predictions in the world of wrestling and boxing in 2024? Man, Francis Ngannou, heavyweight champion.
Whoa, that's big.
Wrestling. I'll go Raw goes to Disney.
Whoa, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I dig that.
This is going well, right? I think this is, what's the best about the Substack crew? There's no trolls or anything. It's all good people. Glad to have the show back in our lives from Juan. Quick one for me. What percentage of the time do you know the main event or even just some of the fights of a pay-per-view before they are announced or confirmed? It seems sometimes with some fights that are announced that you knew all along. It's always different. Some that I know, there are some that I know that they're in the works and for whatever, like I know some of the fights on Saudi. I know, but again, no one wants to hear that because they're like, just tell us. So I don't try to puff my chest out there. I was just trying to let you guys know that Diaz and Masvidal weren't fighting on 300, and that you can kind of move on from that. And then I think I maybe dropped a hint that they were fighting each other. Maybe not. Sort of like Rose Namajunas and Amanda Ribas, but I didn't say like I thought that that. Oh, like I don't like to do the thing where it's like, oh, I know something you don't know. That's annoying. No one wants to hear that, Man, so many questions. What does
Wish
bigger?
you could answer them all.
What does bigger pay-per-view numbers? 300 or AJ versus Ngannou? Of course, 300. It's going to be tough. AJ Ngannou Friday afternoon. That's going to be tough. But ultimately, I don't think they really care. Like I saw Chael do another video saying it's going to bomb on pay-per-view. Chael, when are you going to learn? They don't care. And when I say they, AJ doesn't care. Matchroom doesn't care. The Saudis don't care. Francis Ngannou doesn't care. You're thinking about this in the old UFC model. They're all getting insane money, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. They don't care. This is the one thing they're clutching onto. But the pay-per-view numbers. They don't care. They don't care. Now, is it smart not to care? Will that come back to bite them in the butt? Maybe. But right now, they don't care. He's getting 3, 4, 5x. You think he cares about the pay-per-view numbers? Doesn't care. And AJ's one of the biggest draws out of the UK, if not the biggest. It'll do just fine over there. Okay, 2 more. What do you make of the UFC continuing to make fight announcements from Jordan at bizarre times? Dana announcing the Poirier and Charles fights at 1 a.m. can't be the best for maximizing impressions, virality of the content. Any insights or thoughts? I don't know. I think Dana is just on this thing now where he wants to get it out himself. And 1 a.m. our time is 10 p.m. their time. And he just does it whenever he thinks it's appropriate to do it. I don't think there's much thought going into all of this. I think the main thing is he just wants to get it out himself, which I'm fine with. Ultimately, in a perfect world, I think the fighters should be able to announce their own fights. I really do. That I think would be best. Let them celebrate their moments. Now I know it's hard. There's 2 fighters, but maybe the A side gets to pick. Who knows? But other than that, I just think he's doing it whenever he wants to do it. Last one, Jonesy. Hola, Ariel. This question is for the Parlay Boys. Now that you've been consistently making bets on MMA for a while, which bets/props do you think gives you the best chances to win? My fellow degenerates could use some expert advice. One guy, Matt Arnold, says flyweight unders. Would you agree with that, GC?
I don't know. I guess we got to see if they're back in 2024. 2 flyweight fights to start out the year. We get another one next week. So we'll see. We'll see. They certainly died in 2023. I don't think any specific type of bet is going to give you the best chance of winning. I think it all matters on the fight. Could be an over, could be an under, could be a specific prop, could just be a money line.
Yeah.
I like that they call us experts, though. It's a nice compliment.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are experts.
Who's you guys? It's literally just GC.
No.
Still don't even know if I'm an expert.
Maybe Frank.
Yeah,
Oh, you
thank
know
you.
what? Actually, it's
Producer
GC
likes
and
to throw
Pena.
some-
It's GC and Pena.
Pena.
And Rick.
No, definitely not.
By the way, the other part of the whole McAfee thing that we didn't talk about is Stephen A. Smith.
What do you mean?
When you know he's watching all of this, and number one, knows how much McAfee got paid, and knows the leash getting longer, and it's just saying
the bag that he can collect and the
it's just saying
the
like,
power
oh,
that he
okay,
can accumulate.
I used to be the big dog that everyone talked about on this network.
I think he still is, but
it's
getting
See him
closer.
in the national championship game.
with MJ
And Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
Travis Scott.
I think he's still the guy, but
he's got to be watching all this.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You can get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.